Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast Livestream. I hope everyone had a great weekend. What I can say, and what you've been observing as well, if you follow the Middle East and what's happening in the world's most chaotic and strategic region on a regular basis like I do, you knew this weekend that something big was coming, right? You knew either that a ceasefire was coming between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, or that an Israeli operation in Rafah, which is the last bastion, the last stronghold of Hamas, was coming. Well, folks, I think we have our answer. It looks like the IDF, not it looks like, the IDF is commencing. I don't know if it's going to be a full-scale invasion just yet, but certainly commencing with its operation in Rafah. Meaning, right now, as I come to you around 5:15 or so East Coast time in the United States, the IDF is pounding the eastern half of the city of Rafah, which lies in southern Gaza, right along the border between Gaza and Egypt. Airstrikes as well, pretty serious airstrikes over the past 24 hours, and IDF soldiers moving into position for what appears to be an offensive against Rafah. And why is that important? Well, number one, folks, Rafah, again, as I mentioned a minute ago, is the last stronghold for Hamas, meaning the vast majority of Hamas battalions have been smashed since the October 7th massacre. The IDF has done extraordinary work in crushing large sections of this demonic death cult known as Hamas. And yet, 4 Hamas battalions remain alive and kicking in Rafah. Now, the good thing about it is they're completely isolated in Rafah. After Rafah, folks, there's really no place else for Hamas to run unless Egypt allows them to cross the border into Egypt. That's basically where you're at. Also, so that gives paramount importance to the IDF's operation, shows you the necessity of the IDF operating in Rafah. That's first. Also, second, good bet that some of the Hamas leadership could be hiding out in Rafah in tunnels underneath that city. Is Yahya Sinwar there? We don't know. Is he still in Khan Yunis? We've heard conflicting reports. Sinwar, of course, the leader of Hamas in Gaza. Third, the hostages. Are a good amount of Israeli hostages in Rafah. Now, folks, listen, there are some 130 hostages still missing. It's a good bet, sadly, that not all 130 are alive. We don't know how many are still alive. We pray that all are, but it looks likely that some of those 130 who have not returned home from Hamas captivity may be dead. But many, it appears, are still alive. And could they be in Rafah? A lot of answers, folks, coming if Israel really goes all in Rafah. I said at the top, they're commencing the offensive against Rafah. It's not a full-scale invasion yet. And by the way, the world, talking about wailing and gnashing its teeth, especially the White House in the country I'm sitting in right now. I'm sad to say the White House. I'm proud to be an American. I'm sad to say the posture of the government of the United States right now is basically threatening Israel, haranguing Israel, and forcing Israel to fight with one arm tied behind its back in Rafah and in Gaza writ large. But the wailing and gnashing of teeth by the world over an Israeli offensive in Rafah, despite that, Israel is doing what it needs to do to achieve the stated goal of crushing Hamas once and for all, so that this death cult never poses any sort of threat to the world's one and only Jewish state ever again. That's the goal. And you can't accomplish the goal, which has been laid out by Israel's military and political leadership, without entering Rafah. It's a non-starter. Because Hamas will continue to burrow in Rafah and then extend their control back beyond Gaza, back throughout Gaza, I should say. And if they had their way, yes, beyond Gaza as well. But if that Rafah power base is permitted to remain, then Hamas lives to fight another day. And we've already seen Hamas rearing its head again, northern Gaza, central Gaza, in places. And the IDF has had to go back in and mop up in some of these areas, including the notorious Shifa hospital a few weeks ago. Folks, we know what this looks like. A Hamas that is left alive to fight another day, we know what it looks like. Number one, we've already seen, as I just mentioned, Hamas reconstituting itself in places like Shifa Hospital. And number two, Hamas leaders have been very, very explicit in what they plan to do. And we've showed you the sound bites on the Watchman, on my brand new show on TBN, Stakelbeck Tonight, of Hamas leaders talking very openly about wanting to duplicate, or in their view, even bettering October 7th. It does not take a brain surgeon to analyze this. They're going to fan out from Rafah back across Gaza and dig more tunnels and rebuild the rocket and missile arsenal with help from the Iranian regime. And in a few months, a few years, they'll try another October 7th style attack, but it will begin with rocket barrages. And that's what we saw yesterday, folks, which really precipitated, and I think was the final straw for Israeli leaders and made it an absolute necessity to invade Rafah and eliminate this threat once and for all. No more playing around and delaying and trying to please the world, because the world's never going to be happy no matter what Israel does. Israel could give up one thing and the world wants more. That's how it's worked. But yesterday, out of Rafah, rockets launched by Hamas, and 4 Israeli soldiers are dead. And that was, again, out of Rafah. Key point there. And when you have 4 Israeli soldiers dead after a Rafah attack, and we'll talk more about it. Before I do, a quick reminder. Number one, if you have not subscribed, be sure to subscribe to this channel, the Watchman News channel, right here on YouTube. We'd love to have you here with us every day as watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this, folks. Crucial Bible, prophetic times, perilous times, but prophetic times. And click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Hey, many times throughout this campaign since October 7th, we've been posting on the weekends as well. I say that because you don't want to miss any of the videos that we're posting. If you want biblical truth in times of what seemed to be almost universal deceit, worldly deceit, then this is the place for you. It's current events, news, Middle East focused from a biblical perspective. And folks, never was it more clear on October 7th and what we've seen in the aftermath, the absolute demonic wave of anti-Israel, anti-Semitic explosions across the Western world. Never has it been more clear that we are locked in a spiritual battle. We battle not against flesh and blood, but spirits and principalities ultimately. This is a spiritual war against demonic forces. There's no other way to say it. Very simple. I'll say it again. This is a spiritual war against demonic forces. You're truly in that. It's not a movie. It's not a horror movie or a sci-fi movie. It's happening in real time right now, and we're living it. There's no other way to describe what's happening right now to Israel and the Jewish people, and by extension to friends of Israel, to Bible-believing Christians who believe that God has a great plan for the nation of Israel still, as well as a great plan for the church. The two don't have to be mutually exclusive. We serve a big God who can have a great plan for the body of Christ, for followers of Jesus, for the church, and a great plan for the land of Israel. And he does. But once you subscribe here, we'd love you to subscribe here, I should say. It'd be great to have you here with us every day, part of the Watchman family. Hey, secondly, remember Stakelbeck Tonight, my brand new show every night on TBN, every weeknight, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you love the Watchman, you love what we do here on the YouTube channel, every night you will love Stakelbeck Tonight. Tonight, we have Pastor Jack Hibbs with us, our good friend, who's got a great channel here on YouTube as well. So Pastor Jack will be with us breaking down everything happening in the world right now and how it matters to you, no matter where you live. But I mentioned that attack yesterday, and we've got thousands with us. Active chat from around the world as I glance right now. We'll have thousands more before we're done. But if you just joined us, Israel begins its operation in Rafah. Is this going to be the full-scale operation? Is this the calm before the storm? Is this Israel softening up Hamas before it goes in full bore? We shall see. But right now I can tell you that the IDF has been pounding eastern Rafah, and airstrikes for the past 24 hours, pretty heavy ones. And here's the crux of it. I mentioned a minute ago that the Kerem Shalom crossing. Now that's, folks, wrap your heads around this. This is what Israel's dealing with. And this is what the world is trying to restrain Israel from dealing with. The Kerem Shalom crossing is a place where the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, are helping to facilitate humanitarian aid into Gaza for the people of Gaza. Hamas knows that. And yet, yesterday, Sunday, May 5th, Hamas fired rockets from Rafah. Would those rockets even have been able to be fired from Rafah if the Israeli offensive had began weeks ago? Probably not. But the IDF stalled the offensive and Israel stalled the offensive as ceasefire talks were ongoing and as the world put relentless pressure on Israel. But I digress. The rockets were launched at the humanitarian aid. This is how much Hamas cares about the people of Gaza, which it purportedly governs. Blasting and targeting humanitarian aid convoys, killing 4 Israeli soldiers, and making a Rafah operation an absolute necessity. Needless to say, it's been a necessity since October 7th. Before October 7th, actually, it was a necessity. That's a longer story. But now Israel says, look, clearly, if we don't go into Rafah, Hamas will use it as a terror base. They just launched rockets that murdered 4 Israeli soldiers. And by the way, also targeted humanitarian aid convoys meant for the people of Gaza. This is the sick, twisted, sadistic ideology and strategy of Hamas. Folks, they willfully use civilians as part of their war strategy, as human shields first. Stationing rocket launchers, all sorts of weaponry in civilian areas like hospitals, schools, playgrounds, where they know women and children will be. And if those women and children get killed, in Hamas's view, well, that's too bad. It's just part of the greater jihad and they're martyrs for the cause. That's the mindset. If the people starve, they don't receive their humanitarian aid, too bad. That's the mindset. This is sick, evil, and demented, and it must be crushed. My prayer is that Israel does exactly that and finishes the job those remaining 4 Hamas battalions in Rafah. Because if Israel doesn't, this demonic evil will stretch back throughout Gaza, and it will threaten Israel again. And by extension, it will threaten the world. Why do I say that? Because the world and the Iranian regime and Hamas's patron in Iran, of course, and Russia, China, Hezbollah, they will see the weakness. That's how they'll see it. They'll see Israel's acceptance of Hamas's continued existence, Israel's declining to go into Rafah amid relentless Western pressure. They'll see it as a point of weakness and a show of abject weakness, not only on the part of Israel, but by extension on the part of the West. They know Russia, China, Iran, Hezbollah, etc., Hamas itself. They know that the West, in particular the Biden administration, has tied Israel's hands. And if Israel doesn't stand up to it and say what Prime Minister Netanyahu said last night in ceremonies, by the way, in Jerusalem commemorating the Holocaust, it's Holocaust Remembrance Day, an annual event in Israel at Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum outside Jerusalem. Prime Minister Netanyahu said, if we must go it alone, we will go it alone. We'll do this alone. And folks, it looks like he's going to have to do exactly that. I have to be honest with you, because Hamas says that it accepted a ceasefire. Now, it's interesting. Working with the team here, I said, well, what is the deal? This was several hours ago as we're monitoring information coming out of the region. Did Hamas accept a ceasefire or not? Because I'm hearing, look, and we're seeing Israel is now operating in Rafah. Well, Hamas says that it accepted a ceasefire. This is pretty interesting, folks. Actually, it's pretty diabolical and keeping in character with Hamas and the Iranian regime. Hamas is saying that it accepted a ceasefire. And look, there have been ceasefire negotiations stretching on for weeks through intermediaries, Israel and Hamas. But the ceasefire that Hamas suddenly says it has accepted is one that Israel knew nothing about. Israeli leaders said right away, Hamas is saying it accepted a ceasefire. We've never even heard of this particular ceasefire. And what's in it, from what we're seeing, we would never agree to. So, no, there is no ceasefire. But Hamas is playing a very clever game here. And folks, they've had success with it in the past 24 hours, where Hamas is saying, hey, we've accepted a ceasefire. And the mainstream media, you guessed it, the mainstream media, especially here in the West, is saying, peace in our time. Hamas has accepted a ceasefire. Now, Israel, you must honor that ceasefire. But Israel says, wait, as the mainstream media carries out the propaganda work for Hamas yet again, Israel says, wait a minute. This ceasefire that Hamas is saying has suddenly been struck, we don't know anything about it. We've never seen these terms. We may have seen them, and we rejected them out of hand in the past. No, there is no ceasefire. This is not what we've discussed. This is not what we would come close to agreeing to. But folks, Hamas has already laid it out there. And all of a sudden, the mainstream media, after Hamas has completely imploded deal after deal, ceasefire agreement after agreement over the past several weeks, now the mainstream media says, look, and even Western governments, look, Hamas was willing to do a deal. Hamas was willing to agree to a ceasefire. It was Israel that didn't want a ceasefire. Israel doesn't want peace. Folks, the sick, twisted, I'll use the word again, demented game. And in these times of deceit, and I've said this before as well, I'll say it again today, the prophet Isaiah described it very accurately, where good is called evil and evil is called good. Tell me you are not living in that space in 2024. Good is called evil. Evil is called good. Bible times. So the world's going to howl and point the finger at Israel. Hamas wanted peace, but Israel didn't. Hamas announced, we accept a ceasefire, but Israel didn't want it. Now, at the same time, Israel is trying to evacuate, at last count, some 100,000 civilians at last count from Rafah. Let's get them out of Rafah. Israel doesn't want to harm civilians. It only wants to eliminate Hamas terrorists. Sadly, in war, just as the war, I don't know, to eliminate Nazis in World War II, just as in that case, at times, and this is a tragedy of war since the dawn of mankind, civilians are killed. It's terrible. It's horrific. It's war. This is war. It's a war Israel didn't start, didn't want, and didn't choose. It's a war that was forced upon Israel on October 7th, when Hamas, in case you forgot, invaded Israel. Some 1,200, no, not 1,200, 3,000, I'm sorry, 1,200 massacred, 3,000 Hamas terrorists at least invaded, swept out across southern Israel. Israel, the size of the state of New Jersey. They swept out across southern Israel. 3,000 Hamas terrorists, followed, by the way, by thousands of innocent Gazan civilians who followed and came in and looted and raped and pillaged on the backs of Hamas. And that's a fact. You're not hearing about that in the mainstream media. They slaughtered 1,200 Israelis in cold blood. The next day, October 8th, and it took over 200 more away into captivity. The next day, Hezbollah to the north, October 8th, began firing rockets unilaterally. On their own volition, began firing rockets into northern Israel. In both cases, Hamas and Hezbollah essentially declared war on Israel. This is an Israeli response. And now Israel, folks, we've had many guests on the Stakelbeck Tonight Show. And again, TBN, every Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, who've talked about, foremost experts on urban warfare, military strategy, who have said, listen, Eric and viewers, The Israeli operation in Gaza will be studied for years to come. For this fact, the extraordinary lack of civilian casualties, considering the conditions and the circumstances the IDF is trying to operate under in the most densely packed urban area in the world. That's Gaza, where literally every home is booby-trapped, where entire cities have become terror bases, whether it's Khan Yunis, whether it's Gaza City, whether it's Rafah, with a network of hundreds of miles of tunnels beneath a city. Who has ever had to operate under such circumstances with relentless world scrutiny and pressure? And the IDF has performed admirably, more than admirably. Despite, and what army in the world would do that? Would not only announce, we're coming in, everyone, but evacuate civilians in the hundreds of thousands, even into the millions, and relocate them out of harm's way. No one does that. I'm a proud American. I love my country. Our military is the most humane, along with Israel, in the history of modern warfare. No doubt. I don't know that we even did that. The U.S. Army, the U.S. military in Iraq and elsewhere. And again, the U.S. military, incredibly humane. Off the charts humane, strict rules of engagement, extraordinary lengths to avoid civilian casualties. But this Gaza operation, with the unprecedented scrutiny, in an age of social media and cameras everywhere, what the IDF is operating under, the pressure, the scrutiny, it's never been seen before in world history. And the world wants more. The world's still not satisfied. The world is obsessed with Israel. What do I mean by that? It's an unhealthy obsession by Israel's enemies. That's what I mean, to get more specific. There are folks, wrap your heads around this. Really think about this. There are only 15 million Jews in the entire world. 15 million. That's it. In a world full of billions of people, there are 15 million Jews. Yet all it hears about, you seem, is how Israel and the Jewish people are the cause of all the world's problems. 15 million people. And a tiny Jewish state, one Jewish state, the size of the state of New Jersey, again. Hey, I grew up in Philly. Jersey's tiny. You can travel the whole state in a few hours. One Jewish state, that's it, the size of the state of New Jersey, where about 8 million Jews live now. And there's 15 million in the world. That's it. Out of billions. Does anyone see that this is insane? And does anyone also see how this is a spiritual battle? The devil, yeah, he exists. You believe in God, believe in the enemy of your soul because he exists. The devil has a bullseye on the back of the Jewish people. It's a spiritual battle. Why? Why would the devil be so preoccupied with Israel and the Jewish people and his demonic hordes here on earth like Hamas and what we're seeing on college campuses right here in the United States? Why would he be so obsessed and preoccupied with eliminating and persecuting the Jewish people? Because Israel's existence, get ready for it, Israel's existence is proof of God's existence. You might say, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Folks, anyone who sees the miraculous rebirth of Israel in 1948 and doesn't see God's hand in that and just see an absolute miracle, you're denying, come on. Then you have more faith than me, I would say, in secularism and agnosticism and atheism. For a people to be dispersed to the ends of the earth for 2,000 years, and then to return 2,000 years later, after 2,000 years of relentless persecution, and the Bible said all this would happen. That's why I say it's proof of God's existence. The Bible has a 100% accuracy rate when it comes to prophetic predictions and prophetic pronouncements in its pages. The Bible said the Jewish people would be dispersed from the land. They'd be hounded, persecuted, never have peace for those 2,000 years. And then they would return to the land in the latter days, the last days. And the prophet Amos said, they'll never be uprooted again once they return. Welcome to, again, 2024. Who ever heard of such a thing in world history for the Jewish people to be dispersed and in 2,000 years return and revive the Hebrew language? And Israel's enemy, and Genesis 12:3, God says, I'll bless those who bless you, I'll curse those who curse you. Doesn't this give Israel's enemies pause? That's why you know it's an irrational, demonic hatred. Because history bears us out time and time again, the truth of Genesis 12:3. The enemies of Israel and the Jewish people always, and I mean always, end up in the ash heap of history. Let's take it back to Pharaoh, Haman, the Philistines, the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Ottomans, the Nazis. Where are they? And against all odds, this tiny people group, this ancient tiny people group, not only survives, I mean against all odds, but thrives. To rebuild and restore Israel in 1948 after 2,000 years, and to do it only 3 years after the Holocaust, when the Jewish people were practically eliminated, it defies any rational explanation. But the enemies of Israel are blinded by an absolute irrational, demonic hatred. It's a spiritual thing, folks. They hate the Jews with a blinding hatred straight from the pit of hell. That's where it comes from. So deny all the facts, the improbable but very true facts that I just laid out for you. They'll deny it and they'll find some excuse. It's all a coincidence. It's all a coincidence. Israel's continued existence is all a coincidence. What I laid out is a coincidence? 2,000 years to return, revive the Hebrew language, and continue to survive against all odds. How do you explain the 6-day war? The Yom Kippur War, these miraculous victories. How do you explain 99% of those Iranian projectiles being shot down on April 13th? It defies rational explanation. The God of Israel. The answer is the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. And as Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian regime are eventually in the ash heap of history, Israel will still be standing. It won't be easy. The time of Jacob's trouble is practically upon us. The Bible is very clear. It won't be easy. But when the dust settles, Israel will still be standing. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the H's of terror there, the Iranian proxies, again, they'll wind up in the same place Pharaoh, the Nazis, Haman. Don't the enemies of Israel see that? And doesn't that give them pause? But you're dealing with people who aren't students of history, who certainly aren't students of the Bible, and who are spiritually blind. And whether the far radical left, radical Islam, the neo-Nazi types on the fringe of the right, extreme fringe, these are people who don't know Jesus. They don't know God. So, of course, they're more prone to accepting this wicked, wicked anti-Semitic ideology. But it just always astounds me. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It's history's oldest hatred. Anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, it's since the dawn of time. And the anti-Israel hordes are foolishly walking right into it once again. You're lying. Everything you're saying is wrong. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. They hear you when you make the case for Israel, but they don't listen. There's a big difference between hearing and actually listening. You're a liar. What did I just say? Israel's evil. Free Palestine. Okay, great argument. Great counter argument. Wow, very deep, lots of depth, profound. But we do what we do, folks, because we must for such a time as this, and we'll continue. By the way, I mentioned Hezbollah. Some 100 Hezbollah rockets fired at Israel over the past 24 hours, and drones today in the beautiful town of Metula along the Israel-Lebanon border injured 2 Israelis. As we talk about Rafah, let's not take our eye off the ball to the north. And we've been talking this and talking about it again and again, that the greater battle will come to the north, the Great Northern War, which will pit Israel against Hezbollah and the Iranian regime to an extent in Syria and Lebanon. It will not be pretty. But it's, again, a necessary battle for Israel to fight, to defeat evil. That's the simplest way I could say it, to defeat evil. And it is demonic, wicked evil that Israel's facing right now. Do you want to help? Everyone watching right now is saying, what can I do? Can I help in any way? I feel helpless. I'm sitting here wherever, Africa, I'm in the United States, I'm in Europe, I'm in Asia, Latin America. We have viewers from all around the world here. Number one, you can pray, and you should, because prayer works. And that's not trite. It's not, hey, I'm going to pray for you. No, I'm really going to pray for you. I'm really going to pray about the situation. And I really believe prayer works because I've seen it work in my own life. I've seen it work on April 13th when 99% of those incoming Iranian projectiles were intercepted against all odds once again. Israel's existence, continued existence, is an answer to prayer. All of it. So do that. Secondly, you want to get involved, get your hands and help on the ground in a tangible, physical way. Mayor Panim, our good friends. Hey, we've been telling you about them over the past several weeks. mpgive.org. That's mpgive.org. mpgive.org. Mayor Panim is an incredible Israeli humanitarian organization. They're based in Israel. Folks, they've got these soup kitchens, and you might say a soup kitchen. No, this is state-of-the-art, beautiful restaurant-style facilities. Awesome. Great food, high quality. I've eaten it. I can tell you, it's good stuff. And they've got several branches throughout Israel. You say, why is that important? Because Mayor Panim is actually serving and doing God's work in serving Israel's neediest and most vulnerable. I'm talking Holocaust survivors. I'm talking victims of October 7th, people evacuated from their homes in southern Israel, people evacuated from their homes in northern Israel. Israel's neediest, most vulnerable, and most desperate. Mayor Panim is stepping into the breach, stepping into the void, providing them with hot meals, reserve soldiers who are away from their families, their wives or kids. I just had lunch with a friend of mine the other day who had to leave his family and go into Gaza to defend his nation. Mayor Panim's helping them. Meals, shelter, everything. Mayor Panim's stepping up, and they're doing it. mpgive.org. This is the most precarious, perilous time in Israel's history, no doubt. Certainly since the Yom Kippur War in 1973, perhaps more so, because you have the looming nuclear specter of Iran over Israel's head, and because you have an undependable, and that's being kind, U.S. administration right now in D.C. This is the time where the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, could use a few good friends. Check out Mayor Panim, lend your support, mpgive.org. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on The Watchman. Remember, tonight, Stakelbeck Tonight on TBN, my brand new nightly show, Pastor Jack Hibbs from Real Life with Jack Hibbs, the Jack Hibbs podcast. He joins me for, he blew the roof off the place. Let's just say that. Pastor Jack does not hold back. That's tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time and 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Stakelbeck Tonight. Do not miss it on TBN. Until tomorrow, thanks so much for joining us here today on The Watchman. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back.